To act like a mob implied a philosophical dimension Sonic had yet to consider. Did Metal mean to suggest he should clean up the mess of others? Sonic supposed he had done so often enough, but cleaning up after Eggman's latest scheme usually involved more destruction than organization. Sonic pondered this as the emerging shadow grew dark and the mob bristles poked into his quills. Despite the fact whatever was casting it moved painfully slowly, its steps still clanged perilously close. But as the light struck the shadow, it suddenly evaporated, and Sonic could see its owner clearly. It was nothing more than a blank and simple egg pawn with a surprisingly modern jetpack strapped to its back, and it was clambering into the closet. It was only then that Sonic realized perhaps Metal meant the mob thing much more literally, so he froze, unmoving with the mob in his face and Metal hiding behind him. "It's just an egg pawn," Sonic hissed under his breath. "I think I can take out an egg pawn." "Shh, be quiet. Mobs do not speak," Metal whispered, pressing down on Sonic's shoulders. That was true. Metal had a point. Mobs were speechless. So Sonic returned to perfect stillness as the egg pawn marched towards him. It clanked forward with clumsy steps and came to an abrupt halt in front of Sonic. It stared at him, or behind him, Sonic couldn't tell. The only thing he could do was continue to stand, feeling the weight of Metal's hands on his shoulders and the air stinging his unblinking eyelids. The egg pawn must have come to some decision, because it lifted its hands and grasped the mob between Sonic's palms. Its joints screeched as it struggled to lift both the mob and the two of them into the air. It then lumbered from the closet, nearly dropping the mob more than once, and finally stopped near the edge of the waterfall. The rushing water was so close that Sonic wrinkled his nose when the water misted his face. The egg pawn lingered at the water, shook the jetpack, and the terrible screeching returned at once. With a clumsy wave, it lifted the mob, Sonic and Metal dangling from the handle, and jumped. They fell like rocks. The jetpack whined and hissed as the water rushed towards them. Sonic screamed, only to have Metal throw his hands over his mouth. But as the water lapped at his heels and the jetpack screeched at its peak, the egg pawn jerked up. Sonic's stomach heaved, and he was suddenly glad he had nothing to eat but water. The egg pawn leveled itself in the air, then turned and followed the pipe down. The passage was narrow, and Sonic's knees splashed into the water below them. His wrists strained under the combined weight of Metal and himself, but he held firm. The passage grew narrower and narrower, the water higher and higher, and just as Sonic thought the water would swallow them completely, the egg pawn pulled up. At long last, Sonic saw salvation, for just ahead was a faint light, like a single, dim candle in a dark room, and it poured through the end of the tunnel. The light grew brighter and brighter until the egg pawn burst through it. Sonic slammed his eyes shut, for the light was bright and irritating, but after a moment, he squeezed one eye open. What he saw shocked him, and he immediately gaped with both eyes. Trees and grass spread across the horizon like a blanket, and the dark night sky pressed down from above. The wind, fresh and cold, bit his skin, and Sonic gasped, feeling the sense of the open air fill his lungs. He was outside! The egg pawn wobbled, screeched, and then dropped. The ground approached dangerously fast, but the egg pawn leveled out at the last moment. Water poured from the sewer line into what had once been a small creek, creating a river of wastewater runoff. The grass, the trees, and the waterfall all mesmerized Sonic, discolored though they were, but he felt Metal pull on his quills. Not hard, though firm enough to get his attention. "Now's our chance! Take him out!" Metal shouted over the screeching clamor of the jetpack. Sonic grinned. He was outside, and he was about to destroy a robot. This was how things should be. "I'm on it," Sonic said. With a single smooth motion, he swung back, then launched his feet forward while still grasping the mob. Metal was stuck to his robotic foot, but his organic one flung free, and he smashed the egg pawn's chest with his heel. Its eyes sparked, and the whole unit shuddered. The jetpack sputtered and died. Without the jetpack, the egg pawn dropped all altitude and crashed into the river below, taking both the mob and the two of them with it. As soon as he was out of the air, Sonic felt water splashing all around him. His face submerged, and he panicked. He had avoided death by drowning so far, but this time would be different. This time, the water would win. He screamed and floundered, throwing his arms into the air. "Help me! Metal, I can't swim!" Metal did nothing but loom over him. "Somehow, I think he will survive." Sonic went to retort, but he felt the ground beneath his feet. He blinked, then stood up. The water merely brushed against his shins, but no higher. "Oh." Sonic said, brushing his quills back and looking aside in embarrassment. Well, you can't blame me. Normally water ends badly. What are you doing? Metal had thrown his arms around the egg pond, and he was dragging into the shore. You recall how I said an aerial maintenance unit likely patrolled the waterway? Metal said. He dropped the egg pond in the grass. You think this guy is it? Sonic said. He gingerly walked across the river and shook himself dry on the shore. Yes, it stopped in the closet for a mob. That is why we were able to escape. It did not notice us. I knew egg ponds were stupid, but I didn't know they were that stupid, Sonic said. Indeed. And further, I suspect that was not the only supply station the egg pond visited. It was likely following a route. Sonic walked over to Metal and inspected the egg pond himself. Though he had kicked a hole through its chest, the rest of it appeared undamaged. He understood where Metal was going with this. You think we can figure out where the egg pond was headed? Yes, and with that information, we will know how to proceed, Metal said. He clenched his fists. Nega has done nothing but throw us around like puppets, and we will never escape if we continue to let him make all the moves. Sonic grinned with excitement. Metal's plan was perfect, but that was just like Metal. Sonic knew Metal was smart, cunning, and strategic. Whatever Metal decided they should do next would be exactly right. He watched as Metal pulled a cable from his maintenance panel and slapped it into the port on the egg pond's head. I will examine this unit's hard drive for information. In the meantime, can you scout the area? Do not go far. We do not want to be separated again, but it would be useful to know what is in the immediate vicinity. I thought you'd never ask, Sonic said, and he leapt forward. I'll have this area clear before you can say lead chili dogs. Why would I say... Metal started, but he didn't finish, because Sonic was already gone. Of all the joys in his life, none surpassed the feeling of the wind blowing through his quills as he ran. Sonic lived to run, and he lived for the wind. It blew all the cares and worries from his mind, just as his pounding heart flushed the stress from his body. No matter what happened to him, as long as he could run, he would be free, and as long as he was free, he could do anything. He backtracked along the river, but came to a stop when he found the riverhead. Water was pouring from a large sewer line that jetted out from an enormous tower. The building itself was part skyscraper, part factory, with sleek black concrete covering the exterior. It rose higher and higher until the building pierced the sky itself. It would have risen above the clouds, if there were any, which was part of what made the night sky so eerie. Sonic hadn't noticed it at first. He was too excited to be outside. But the sky was utterly dark. There were no stars, no clouds, no moon in the sky above, and instead of the familiar stillness of the night, the sky had the stillness of the void. Sonic stared at it. His fur stood on end. He tore his gaze through the forest. Even the trees and the grass weren't quite right. Though the tree leaves were green, the trunks were yellow, and they gently glowed like some kind of alien fungus. Kneeling down, Sonic ran the grass between his fingers. At first, he had thought the grass to merely be a dark green, but as he examined it more closely, he saw the blades were in fact beet purple. His ears swiveled as he listened. This was a forest, and though he had hoped to hear the familiar scurry of wildlife, there was nothing. There were no birds or insects. The only sound was the rushing water and his own breath. With one last look at the tower, Sonic shuddered and began to walk back along the bank of the river. He knew too well that the river contained no life, and neither did the fake forest with its yellow trees. A profound loneliness crept into his mind. He and Metal were the only living creatures in this bizarre wasteland. Sonic's walk sped into a jog, and then a sprint. He couldn't stand the blank sky, the empty forest, and the poisonous river. The isolation was overbearing, and Sonic wanted nothing more than to be with someone else, and to know he wasn't alone in the universe. Metal came into view across the horizon, and Sonic rushed to his side. He threw his arms around Metal's shoulders and buried his face in his chest. As long as he was with Metal, he wouldn't be alone under the void of the sky. Sonic? What happened? What did you find? Metal said. He stood limply. Oh, nothing much, Sonic said. He let go of Metal and took a step backwards. We're alone out here. There's no one else. The trees are fake, the grass is fake, and there's that tower. Nega built some kind of huge tower. It must have been where we were trapped. In the sky. What's wrong with the sky? Where are the stars? You noticed it as well, Metal said. It's not just the stars that are missing. Metal lifted his head and looked distantly to the sky. There are no radio waves either. I've been scanning this entire time, and I have picked up nothing. Not even the ubiquitous cosmic microwave background radiation of the universe. Cosmic microwave what? Sonic said blankly. Cosmic microwave background radiation, or CMB for short. It is the signature of the Big Bang, and it can be detected anywhere in the universe. To find its absence here is proudly disturbing, to say the least. Sonic cast his eyes to the sky and shuddered. But where did the stars go? This is only a conjecture, and I could be wrong, but I believe we are somewhere so remote that the light of the rest of the universe cannot reach us, Metal said. Light can only travel so quickly, and if we were far enough away, we would lose all possibility of contact with the rest of the universe. We would never see the stars again. Oh, Sonic said. It was all he could say. But we should not worry about that now. As I said, I may be mistaken, but there is good news still. Metal gestured to the Ekpon. This unit's hard drive did contain coordinates for several supply stations. Most pointed behind us, to what I assume would be the inside of the tower you just mentioned. But there was a single coordinate set that pointed approximately 235.6 kilometers northwest from our location. So what do you think is there? Sonic asked. Metal shrugged. Your guess is as good as mine, but I do know one thing. Nega was determined to keep us in that tower, so whatever is out there is probably something he did not want us to find. That makes sense, I guess, Sonic said. His gaze had drifted back to the terrible, empty void above. It made him feel so small. There was an entire universe, as big as it was, and he was but a tiny, insignificant speck, lost in the corner of infinity no one could ever find. Metal looked at him and paused. After a moment, he began to walk away. That caught Sonic's attention. Mets, where are you going? You promised to race me as soon as we get out of there. Well, we are out now, so I will race you to the tower, Metal said. He lifted his hand as he walked, though he did not look back. Sonic snapped up. You want to race now? But what about your engine? It is no matter. I am so superior that I do not even need it to win. Sonic stood still, but Metal kept walking, and now he was several yards away. Sonic ran forward and was at Metal's side in an instant. But you said it yourself. We can't split up. If I run ahead and you get left behind here, we're doomed. Metal turned to Sonic, his optics glittering with amusement. Sonic continued. And I don't even know where this place is. You're the one with the coordinates. This is hardly a fair race. As I said, I will win, with or without my engine. Metal continued to walk forward, but Sonic stopped and said, You've got to be kidding me. Metal looked back and emitted a series of beeps that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Sonic's eyes widened. Metal was kidding him. He slapped his forehead and murmured under his breath, Two can play that game. He leapt behind Metal, and before Metal had time to react, he threw his hands underneath him and scooped him into his arms. Metal was at a loss for words, but he did beep in protest. Oh no, you said this place was way far, and I am not walking at this pace. If you want to race, then we're actually going to go at a race's pace. Metal folded his arms and pretended to pout, though Sonic knew Metal had planned this all along. Metal was smart enough to not argue with the optimal method of transportation. Sonic took off and ran as fast as he could. He relished the familiar sensation of the wind in his quills, although this time was much better than before, because he wasn't alone. The wind was cold against his face, but Metal was warm against his chest. Metal guided him as he ran, and after nearly half an hour, Sonic trotted to a halt. The fake forest was the same here as it had been back there, but a large device, what appeared to be an elevator shaft, cut into the ground. It was unremarkable, upkept just enough to prevent falling into disrepair, but not enough to suggest whoever owned it had any sense of pride. Yet there appeared to be no elevator. Sonic looked down, and he saw nothing but the deep darkness. Is there anything down there? Metal said, turning his head to peer down while Sonic still held him. I don't know, but there's only one way to find out, Sonic said, and he jumped into the elevator shaft.